Welcome to the broadcast. Let's begin with the Sunday Standard. Gentlemen, good to have you back. Good to see you again. You've been well?
Yeah.
All right, let's start with the politics. And in the Sunday Standard, the splashes, I'm going nowhere. Raila Odinga's stunt, opposition leader answering critics who want him to retire from local politics, saying he's not quitting anytime soon despite his recent appointment to a lucrative AU post. Dismas, this talk is not going anywhere anytime soon. Do you think Raila Odinga is going anywhere?
Well, it's just indicated in black and white that he's going nowhere, that he's going to be in the political space. But one wonders, why would people be interested in Raila going somewhere outside the Kenyan political space? Kenyan is supposed for this new constitution, and he has his democratic rights. If he wants to be around to run for president, let him run for president. If he wants to go back to Kibera or Bondo and run for MCA, let him exercise his political rights. And I think it's wrong for the politicians in Kenya and their sycophants to do their political planning anchored on Raila absence from the ballots. Let everybody prepare for 2022 knowing that Raila Odinga is going to run. And if he doesn't run, then maybe they just need to do their risk analysis. But if I were Raila Odinga, I would spend a little more time on the new role that he's been given at the African level. Because really, that's where he's supposed to be. When you speak to people close to him, they say that Raila, in fact, has won a presidential election once, and he's supposed to be playing in that league of a statesman, and let him do that role. Because in this position, it gives him unlimited access to the entire global leadership.
All right.
If he wants to meet with any African president, he will now do it with ease without having to go through any challenges. And in my view, really, this is what Raila Odinga is supposed to be, because he's sitting in the same space with Jakaya Kikwete, with Obasanjo, Pierre Buyoya, and Thabo Mbeki. This is supposed to be his home. But that does not mean that if he's got a political interest in Kenya, he gives the same wide back.
All right. Mark, most of the calls for Raila Odinga to retire from local politics have been coming from central Kenya. Central Kenya political leadership seems to be at loggerheads with the man he calls his brother and their political activities. What do you make of this?
Central Kenya politicians came into office by insulting Raila. That is their CV. That is from point 1 to 6 of their CV out of 10 is based on their ability to sing and dance and abuse Raila. And therefore, for them, it is second nature to insist that Raila must quit politics. Let's remember that in 2013, after Raila lost the petition, they had the same claims. It's the same thing they did in 2017. That is what they do, almost without thinking. That's their natural, their modus operandi is always to call on the exit of Raila Odinga. But I think they will be quite foolish in wishing Raila Odinga away, because Raila Odinga is the central figure in Kenyan politics. And as you know, power abhors a vacuum. And if the moment you get rid of Raila Odinga, you will either have a Hydra situation where you chop off one head and many heads show up, or there will be another kingpin to take his place. So it is ill-advised sometimes, without having an option, politically speaking, to get rid of the likes of Raila Odinga. Also, they forget that one of the things that Jubilee is adept at and have proven this through 3 elections, is they have the ability to beat Raila Odinga. It is sort of like when you have derbies and it's Manchester versus Arsenal or whatever teams there are, you know who's favorite based on the track record. So if you have a track record of having beat Raila 3 times, then the enemy you definitely want in 2022 should be Raila. So in my view, it is both short-sighted and a knee-jerk reaction from them without them considering how the cards may fall should Odinga exit the stage.
This Central Kenya talk, Kipchumba, seems the leaders seem to have thrown to the wind. They don't care what the rest of the country says. They are more bold right now. What do you think?
Welcome back, Ben Kitenge.
Thank you.
I think we should not at any point confuse naivety and adolescence for boldness. You know, when people are in an adolescent stage, at times they depict things which are funny, unique, and queer. We should not confuse that for being bold. And then again, you ask yourself, when we want to celebrate the Mount Kenya members of parliament for coming out and telling us things which are utterly irresponsible, and I'll call it pure, they have nothing, no statistics to show what they are talking about. When you tell the world or the country that Kenya is, that central Kenya is marginalized, the question that we'll ask next is that, have some of these people who are calling themselves central Kenya politicians been to Kuria, Migori, or to some parts of Northeast, where when you are there, you ask yourself, are we in Kenya? So that is the kind of the question. Then another thing that should not be confused.
Yes.
What we are having in central Kenya is anxiety over lack of proper succession in terms of who will succeed President Uhuru Kenyatta. When Mwai Kibaki was leaving, Michuki and the ilk had talked clearly that the person who will succeed Kibaki in that region was Uhuru Kenyatta. Now here we have a situation where nobody knows who will succeed Uhuru Kenyatta. Thinks I should be the one. Others think in the absence of Uhuru Kenyatta, yes, we should give him an extra term. And it is such a thinking that has held back a lot of countries and democracies in this part of the world, whereby we think that one person has monopoly of ideas over other people. Yes, while Uhuru Kenyatta might be a good president and he has done tremendously well for this country, he should, and he has said it more time without number, that I will respect the constitutional limits. Right. Therefore, for the Mount Kenya parliamentarians, the best they can do is to utilize the city and to avoid balkanizing the gamer community.
We'll get into that in more detail shortly. We'll talk about the permutation that people are talking about, as well as what the Central Kenya MPs are saying. In page 10 of the Sunday Standard, the story about the referendum talk, the Mombasa governor Hassan Ali Joho and his Kilifi counterpart Amason Kingi renewing calls for coast unity, declaring their terms for the anticipated referendum. Historical injustices, sharing of resources between the local and national governments, topping the list of the things they want corrected referendum. There seems to be nothing new here, Dismas. Do you think they have, the needs of the Kenyans at heart, or is it just repositioning themselves because they are second-term governors now? Of course, they would be having some bigger political ambition as, maybe presidential ambitions as the coast kingpin, so to speak.
Well, I'm not sure that there's anything to write home about Governor Joe and Governor Kingi. As you've indicated, they're serving their second terms. But if you go to their counties and you're looking for any landmark projects, you are likely to get lost. I mean, the only thing that Governor Joe has been able to do in Mombasa is to give an order to repaint the entire city. But when you go outside the repaint, the town is still dirty. When you go to Kilifi, the only thing you remember is Governor Amason Kingi using a fortune to buy a governor's residence. So even with the resources they have right now, they've not been able to utilize. And there are so many issues affecting the people in the coastal part of the world. But should they wait for the referendum? You've got members of the National Assembly from the coast. You've got so many governors. Why can't they start using the minimal resources they have before they can start talking about a referendum? And in my view, they're just positioning, driving their selfish interests, which are not consistent with their voters. Because you cannot say that we are going to have our issues given attention during the referendum. If there is no referendum, what happens to those issues and concerns they're supposed to be addressing? In my view, these two governors have been a letdown to the members of the coastal community. And it's time for the voters to smell coffee and understand that the entire leadership they've elected does not serve their selfish interests, but rather they just want to line their pockets.
Mark Bichache?
It's true what Dismas is saying. One has to really wonder what a Joho or a Kingi governorship has achieved for the various counties which they represent. And then also, you must consider that it is not small monies that have gone into counties. If you look at Kisumu County, for an example, when Governor Nyong'o took over, and you look at how clean Kisumu is in under a year of Governor Nyong'o, you suddenly realize that the kind of leader you choose actually has an impact directly on the state and the quality of life of people. So that's one side. However, that does not mean that they do not have a voice as far as the referendum and the constitution is concerned. I think one of the key issues that they raise that need to be addressed, especially in the coast, is the issue of historical injustices and the issue of land at the coast. We cannot, as a country, continue to have issues at the coast as far as land is concerned. When we had Mombasa Republican Council, we've had secession calls from the coast simply because we refuse to address the issues that are plain to everyone to see. I think it is time. There is provision in the Constitution about land, which we have never enacted. We've never enacted maximum land use. We've never enacted the issues around what do we do with idle land. Right. And without dealing with such issues, the pains that affect the people of the coast will continue to exist. So I think they are right to that extent. I think they're also right in calling for a regional bloc and regional unity within the region. I think that is also very critical, because one of the things that a lot of counties are beginning to realize is that they are better when they put themselves together. So those are key issues. Yes.
All right. Kipchumba, what do you think about their strategy? Some pundits are saying that the governors, second-term governors who want to have a presidential ambitions or something should rather, concentrate more on doing the work for Kenyans to see rather than, starting to campaign this early. What do you think?
First of all, I am from the school of thought that yes, they have a right to whatever they are thinking and whatever they say is their constitutional right. But also, I am a believer that when you are given a responsibility, if you are trusted with a small thing, yes, do it so well that we can have faith in you delivering a bigger thing. Look at it this way. Most of the things that Governor Joho and Governor Kingi are talking about as their concerns are concerns which can be handled adequately within the framework of the current constitutional dispensation. What else needs a constitutional review for you to help the issues of land, right, for you to help the issues of marginalization of the people down there in Mombasa? All those issues have been sorted. Most of these counties, and the coastal counties to be specific, have nothing to write home about, right, apart from having big names of governors.
Politically speaking, what about the issue of a political party at the coast, or political unity? It has not been able to, it has not happened in the past.
I think that is where the coastal region compares to Western region. They have always talked about a coastal political party since when Kadu was absorbed by Kanu. But look at it this way, Ben. When you talk about political capital, the people down there in Mombasa and the coastal region, in terms of their vote number, they have votes, but their vote number cannot be enough to propel one to be a presidential candidate unless they have extraordinary leadership qualities, which I have not seen any so far. And then again, being second-term governors, I think they want a soft landing, which for me, they should agitate for Senate to be strengthened so that they can just go there and do their thing. But in an ideal situation, when you have served your 2 terms as a governor, the best position you ought to ascend into is to vie for president. But looking at what they have done, when you go to Mombasa, the only landmark you see is a heap of all kind of sewage and everything. The dirt there is the only landmark we can see there is sewage and the dirt. So I think they have nothing to bring to the national table.
Mark, like Kipchumba says, the efforts to have one political unity goes back to the days of Ronald Ngala. Do you think, you don't believe in the so-called Luya unity? Do you believe in Pwani unity?
I don't believe in coastal unity. I don't believe in Kikuyu unity. I don't believe in all of those things. You cannot have democracy and then you balkanize people based on their region or their tribe. That is nonsense. It's the very reason why Kenya is in trouble.
But those people will tell you they have issues that they have in common.
But governors can handle those things.
They have MCAs in common. They have governors in common. This is what we don't understand. I don't understand how Luyas think that if Mudavadi and Wetangula come together, suddenly the issues of Luya land will be dealt with. My friend, the only thing that will probably is we'll find another piece of land in Tokyo to sell. That's the only thing that will happen. So you cannot say that just because certain leaders come together, you've united the people. And the people at the coast are not disunited. Are the Digo fighting with the Mijikenda or the people in Voi? That's not the case. You understand? And this whole idea of unity does not make sense. We need to understand that the issues across this country are the same. And the same madness that the people from Central are trying to propagate, that they give 60% of the GDP. So they're trying to reduce everyone else in Kenya to 40%, as though Central Kenya is a homogeneous place. How many Luyas, Kambakisis are in Central Kenya? You see, so these are the things that we need to stop. This country, this idea of unifying around our tribes, around our regions, for political discourse does not make sense.
What do you believe, what do you think about the Pwani political unity, Dismas?
Well, in my view, unity is paramount, but not the one leader and take him to the national level because he wants to run for political office. But for instance, when you're talking about the issues affecting my community, we have massive issues around tea and coffee. So if the leadership gets united and say, we are getting a raw deal over the cost of selling our tea and coffee, let's unite so that we take our tea to our target markets.
Proper, yes.
Then you see that's a very solid unity. Yes. Right. If you go to the coastal region, if there are the issues around land, you can now identify what are the challenges and what kind of solutions are we going to offer as a bloc, not as an individual, because it's a well-known fact that if you're going to play solo as a governor, as an MP, an MC, or a senator, you are unlikely to make progress. So they need to unite around those ideas, but not for these two governors to look at their chronometer and say it's 4 years before we are kicked out of office. Now, because they prepare for another season in the public sector, then they're saying, let's unite our people. If you're going to unite people around ideas, that is very solid. But if you're uniting people because you're looking for political office, then it's unacceptable. And you know the fear that Governor Joe and Kingi have is they've spent most of their adult life on the back left of top-of-the-range vehicles. And they know after 2022, they may not have the opportunity of being on a GK vehicle. And that's their primary source of concern. I mean, Kipchumba has indicated that land is a big issue. Do they need a referendum to sort out the land issue? Do they need a referendum to sort out do they need a referendum to sort out the mess which is at the Kenya Ports Authority? These are things which can be, I mean, those MPs from the coast, when they come to Nairobi and they go to the gym, they can actually have a meeting somewhere within the National Assembly. They can have a kamkunji and come up with ideas and take them to the next level. And I think as Kenyans, we need to run away from this mediocrity, which we get to elect every 5 years. Because you see now they've got, they're amassing resources. Standard governors are by default billionaires, so they're going to have choppers. And you know, they can afford to run round, give us a bit of money, make us emotional, make us furious, and then we start dancing to their toes. Kenyans must realize that if we do not vote with our interest at heart, we'll keep on having buyer's remorse every 5 years.
We have 1 minute. There's a story here on the Nation on page 8. Mudavadi pushes for dissolution of Paul's body. The ANC leader saying that the current IEBC team cannot be trusted to preside over the current push for a referendum. Very quickly, Mark, what's your take on this?
I think Chebukati and his team have overstayed their welcome. As far as I'm concerned, once the court petition failed, then they should have been absolved of their duties either for incompetence or for criminality. We don't know what happened to the case, but we do know definitely by the statement of the Supreme Court of Kenya that there were irregularities and illegalities. On that basis alone, Chebukati should be at home.
Should it be a complete overhaul of the IEBC?
Completely. I think we need to even relook how the IEBC is constituted, how we get politicians to select who are the commissioners, and we get the same politicians in parliament to approve those people. And then the one who had the least marks, Chebukati was 5th in ranking and is given the position. Those are the problems that the devil has.
Right.
So we need to find a way of returning the independence into that particular commission.
Kipchumba, many people seem to think that we will be having a new IEBC every election or every big thing like boundaries review or that. Is that a problem?
Ben, a national electoral body runs on the fuel that is the national confidence. If our national confidence cannot be sustained by the people empowered to be in the electoral body.
Right.
I have no problem with having an electoral body each year, so long as the national confidence is in them. If today we have an electoral body that will only do the 2022 elections and everybody is confident that they'll deliver, I have no problem if we'll kick them out after that.
All
but
right.
looking at it this way, if you were to ask any Kenyan, he will think Chebukati has been a chairman for the last 10 years. Why? He has been dogged by in every page of every scandal that comes by. IEBC is a footnote to the scandal. Therefore, I think the best thing to help this country as we gear towards the next election, even towards the national census, we should, and the delimitation of the boundaries, we should have a fresh team,
Right.
people who have capacity to deliver, and people who can pump confidence into the national psyche.
All right, be sure to grab your copy of the Sunday Standard for in-depth analysis and news. Let's take a quick commercial break here on Sunday edition. When we come back, we'll talk about that Kenyatta succession talk. The president announcing the other day that his choice of succession shocked many. Political pundits seeming to think that has sent the usual suspects back to the drawing board. Central Kenya saying they want clarity on that issue. The president continuing to censure Central Kenya on the issue. That, in effect, seeming to curtail the Deputy President, William Ruto's forays into Central Kenya. Just what gives? When we come back, we'll talk about the permutations and what might be happening behind the scenes. Don't go too far.
This is KTN News.
Let's get your business ready for today's challenges and tomorrow's opportunities with Safaricom Business Digital Solutions.
Company.
This Sunday, we indulge MRM on the Eye in the Wild program.
We have to keep on serving and conserving the environment.
As we shine a light on opportunities available in the Nanyuki region, captured during our just concluded bus tour.
By the time we are coming back tomorrow, I'd have identified a property that I'd invest in.
Only on the Property Show. As always, there is something for everyone.
This is KTN News.
Bye, guys. Welcome Welcome back. This is Sunday edition here on KTN News. Thank you for staying with us. Let's talk about Uhuru Kenyatta's succession. The president did say the other day that his choice of successor will shock many people. That seems to have thrown the deputy president, William Ruto, camp into a bit of being jittery. Also, Central Kenya has been pushing the president to make his stand clear, saying they want clarity on the issue. The president continuing to censure them, telling them to work for Kenyans and not engage in politicking, saying it is too early. That seeming to also curtail the DP's forays into that particular issue. But most importantly, Central Kenya wanting to know who next leader will be. Uhuru Kenyatta saying that is inconsequential. Many people asking, where does this leave the people that have been perceived to be close to the president of him endorsing them after he retires in 2022? Let's get into this now. There was Dismas, a meeting just after the president did deliver that so-called shocker at the deputy president's residence in Karen. The meeting was also attended by Raila Odinga, and we understand businessman Maina Wanjigi. We did hear during the in the run to the 2017 election, there was Jimmy Wanjigi was in a lot of was at loggerheads with the government, being investigated for I don't know, weapons or something, because of what people said because of his closeness to the NASA campaign. He did say in one of those altercations that the Jubilee party was formed in his home. Are we seeing Deputy President Ruto reaching out to Odinga, or are we seeing Maina Wanjigi being a kind of power broker in this, or are we reading too much into this?
Well, there are many ways to look at it, and maybe it starts after the funeral service for the late Kiano.
Yes.
And the question we need to ask ourselves, who came up with the idea for lunch? Was it the deputy president who came up with the idea for lunch and invited his boss? And then did the boss say, I'm coming for lunch, but I'm coming with Raila Odinga and Jimmy Wanjigi? I mean, if you're able to understand that, then we'll be in a very good position. Mm-hmm. And after now the president, Jimmy Wanjigi, and Raila Odinga gets into Ruto's residence. Was Ruto, in fact, comfortable having Raila Odinga and Jimmy Wanjigi at his residence? Or did he want to have an exclusive lunch with the president so as to sort of buttress or calm down the tensions that had taken place the previous day? And in my view, when you look at all those four personalities, they've got a very long history. And we are told that it's a statement of fact, that it's in fact Jimmy Wanjigi who puts together Jubilee, that is the one who called then Kenyatta and Ruto, and he told them that I'm going to form you into a ticket that is going to capture the presidency. And according to sources who say that they know the Kenyan political space into detail, he made that happen. But of course, he did a runner. Therefore, one has to start asking a million questions, that what was Jimmy Wanjigi doing there? And in my view, Jimmy Wanjigi is probably the most powerful and elected leader we have in Kenya today. And for people who know him, say that he's got a fat bank balance. He understands the Kenyan political space very well. Understand he's very good in numbers. For instance, if you're discussing about Bungoma and politics, you would probably know how every constituency has been voting from 1992. And he also understands the public sector. So his presence there would have many questions unanswered. Mm-hmm. However, the question one begins to ask is, the units responsible for the deputy president's media coverage as well as the presidency did not release photos of Jimmy Wanjigi with those other leaders. Because on social media, the DP's office was very quick to release those photos where they're having lunch or photo opportunities, but they were unable to do the one for Jimmy Wanjigi. So that's now the question we need to ask ourselves.
Right.
And anybody who wanting to ascend to political office in Kenya and you ignore Jimmy Wanjigi, you do it at your own peril.
All right.
Actually, you'll even recall that a few days to the elections, even the media, even journalists in Kenya had the fear they wouldn't even discuss Jimmy Wanjigi in public.
Mark, what do you think of that lunch at the DP's residence?
There are two options. Option number one, that relationships are indeed very cordial between Raila Odinga and the president and William Ruto, and they are comfortable with each other. Or it could be a case of keeping your friends close but your enemies even closer. And by enemies, I am to either Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. The rest, 2022, will either have to negotiate a resolution where they form a coalition, or the swords will be drawn and they will have to battle it out. And given the statements from the president, the walkout in Bomet, and if you look at the temperatures around the whole issue, is the president's handshake with Raila through the political strategists and the political planners into a tailspin, because you cannot prepare for battle if you do not know who your enemy is. And removing Raila as an enemy created all manner of confusion in terms of succession, confusion in terms of referendum, confusion in terms of how do I then treat this person who I've abused for months, if not years, and now he's suddenly my friend. So that is the framework within which this particular meeting must be understood. What is critical, though, is there was nothing said conclusively after the meeting. Everything that we are discussing is by implication. The implication of Jimmy Wanjigi being there. Is he there at the invite of Raila Odinga? Was he there at the invite of Uhuru Kenyatta? Was he there at the invite of William Ruto? Who was his benefactor at this particular meeting? And what elevated him? What is so significant about him at this point in time that elevated him not for a meeting with these three principles, but for it to be known publicly? Because he has met them many times, including the times when Jubilee was being made, and he met them in secret. So why is it necessary that it was public? So there's a lot of innuendo and nuances in this particular meeting, which we must be very careful in how we read it, because there are no permanent friends nor permanent enemies in Kenyan politics.
Kipchumba, even as you give us your thoughts on that meeting, the president ascended into power with a lot of support from the Rift Valley, both in 2013 and in 2017. And a lot of people in the Rift expected him, to automatically, because of the Jubilee party, he's in the Jubilee party, his running mate has been William Ruto, to, endorse him when he retires in 2022. Does his declaration cause a bit of jitters in the DP Ruto camp, do you think?
My position will be one about the declaration, the so-called shocker will be this. I do not expect President Uhuru Kenyatta to be waking up each morning and pledging that I will support William Ruto come 2022. I think that one will be engaging in child's play. But the other thing is this, it will also be political naivety if the strategizing around the deputy president banked or founded his presidency or his presidential ambition on Uhuru Kenyatta support. That one will be naivety, and it will be building a house on cards, and it cannot fly. Because if you are a presidential candidate, you should, and the deputy president being the person he is, I know he knows this, that you cannot bank on President Kenyatta supporting you, and you cannot bank on Tinga not being in the field. That is as it goes. But whether the shocker will work or not, look at it this way. President Daniel Moi wanted Uhuru Kenyatta to be president. It never happened. Mwai Kibaki wanted Musalia Mudavadi to be president. It never happened. So we have learned. And even recently when Obama tried to force Hillary Clinton into the Americans, it backfired. So as we continue growing with the technological growth and with the different issues that people demand from their leaders, an endorsement might not come so much. It will mean something in terms of optics and coming to the national table. But in terms of changing the wind, and look at it this way, by being endorsed, this brings other issues. But because of the covenant, the 2013 covenant, Uhuru Kenyatta seemed to be duty bound. But in politics, this is not a contract of business. This is politics. Nobody is duty bound to do anything. People from the Raila, Kibaki MOUs, everything has always gone south. But now to the lunch. I think that lunch remains a lunch. If you are not in that meeting, any other thing remains speculation. What we can only speculate on is the optics of whether it will change going to 2022. Yes, it will. Now, the people who are approaching 2022 will approach it cautiously because you are not sure if William Ruto and Raila Odinga might work together. So that is one of those now things. And now it takes away the hardline stance where we have people taking a very hardline position, whether in DP's camp or in Raila's camp. Now, all these will now have to come down. The other thing about the presence of Wanjigi. Wanjigi, I will call him in my free terms a wheeler dealer, a power broker. But whether his photo was released to the public or not, that is not of essence. Because look at it this way. Raila Odinga and Wanjigi are bosom buddies. Whether they came there, whether Wanjigi came there accompanying Raila or not, is neither here nor there. I think it's a non-issue. The main issue is that the three national leaders...
But why was he there? Why would he be there?
But you have to remember the setup why they went there. They were from the requiements of the late Kiano. So Kiano must have been, Kiano being a figure and the Wanjigis, they have something together. And when they were there, maybe they have decided to pass by the DP, but it remains speculation.
Let's compare what has been happening. Now in 2002, when President Daniel Arap Moi was retiring from politics, he did endorse Uhuru Kenyatta. For obvious reasons, he was obviously was a KANU candidate, right? Then there were others, obviously. In 2012, when Mwai Kibaki was retiring, he was a bit hands-off. We understand he wanted Musalia Mudavadi, but he was not very vocal or public with it. Many people say because he seems to think he had completed his work. Right now we are seeing Uhuru Kenyatta be very active in saying, in having a say who his successor will be. Whether that will work or not is a story for another day. But why do you think he wants to be part of this conversation? Is it that maybe he has beaten a bit too much and by the time 2022 comes, he'll be having a lot of projects pending and he wants somebody who would want to maybe carry on with his projects? Or what do you think? What is your explanation of this?
Well, Ben, William Ruto is probably the most powerful deputy or vice president all over the world today, and Kenya is going to have, because of his own political capital. And as soon as he was sworn into his second term in office, he started setting up a machinery to become president in 2022. He's made inroads to so many areas, even itching into President Kenyatta's political capital. Now, the reason why President Kenyatta has to come firing from all directions is that he's going to become a lame duck president 1 year into the presidency. That's the reason why President Kenyatta in such a manner the last few days. Because everybody right now is coalescing around William Samoei Ruto. William Samoei Ruto is the only presidential candidate Kenyans know for sure for 2022, ceteris paribus. So everybody, all politicians, are beating a path to his current residence or to Sugoi. They want to identify with him. He's the only candidate declared so far. And I think this has made President Kenyatta, people starting looking at you and treating you as a lame duck president 1 year into your second time, to be very nervous. Because all these leaders, they're no longer talking about the big agenda. They almost want to blackmail President Kenyatta into stating in black or white that he is going to support William Samoei Ruto. If you're the president, you cannot be comfortable. You cannot be in that space. And I think that's the way he's behaving in this manner. Not as a person, but his handlers who've been sponsoring a number of these meetings. Like, for instance, the meeting that took place in Naivasha, one would be very naive to imagine that President Kenyatta was not aware that 70 MPs from his village were meeting in Naivasha, that President Kenyatta did not influence the agenda, either directly or indirectly. So all this thing is around the lame duck presidency, and he needs to sit up and remind everybody that I'm still president. And in 2022, if you think that I'm about to take a quiet, soft exit, I'll be playing around with the levers of political power. That is a substantive position.
Right.
However, there's a very high probability that so many MPs who went to Naivasha did not know what was happening in Naivasha. They did not know the agenda. And it's common. Majority of Kenyans attend meetings without knowing that there was a meeting before that meeting, and there's going to be a meeting after the meeting. So what President Kenyatta has managed to do with Naivasha and Nyeri is to create a lot of pressure and respond to that pressure on his own terms. Because there's been a narrative being propagated by people who want to succeed Kenyatta, that President Kenyatta has done nothing for Central Kenya since he took office. And you know, the MPs, the governors, the MCAs were claiming that for us, you are re-elected leaders, you want to work. He has reminded all and that he is the president of the Republic of Kenya.
Right.
And if there are issues in Mount Kenya, it's those MPs. Like one instance, he said, there's a tick in Central Kenya. He reminded those MPs, understanding his mother tongue, the minister responsible for agriculture comes from that part of the world. And those MPs formed a caucus to go and meet to sort out those issues.
Right.
And I think those two meetings have reminded all and sundry that you cannot joke with President Kenyatta.
All right, we're getting to the Mount Kenya leaders issue. Mark, is it a possibility, is it remotest possible that the president can fail to endorse William Ruto in 2022?
It is not a remote possibility, it is a definite possibility. One of the articles in today's Standard talks about one Murathe, who has been on record saying he himself, as vice chair of Jubilee, is not sure whether William Ruto will be the defined successor. And I'll tell you why. And people, you know, the problem is people always take Kenyan politics as a personal issue. But let's as a concept, the idea of democracy. There is no way in a democratic party such as Jubilee you can guarantee anyone the ticket, because there is a democratic selection process upon which Ben Kitili can apply, Kipchumba can apply, Mark Bichachi can apply. To guarantee anyone a position of successor would be to short-circuit democracy as we know it. He is given an example of Barack Obama. Barack Obama had to stay his hand from meddling with the Democratic primaries until there was a Democratic candidate. Right. So until there is a Jubilee candidate, the president cannot and should not, as a matter of principle, this is not about whether you like Ruto or not, but as a matter of democratic principle, we cannot hand over successorship positions as a matter of privilege. This is why I am on record as being categorically against the politics of debt, siasa za deni. There is no debt anyone is owed.
What about,
as far as the democratic process is concerned?
What about the fact that the deputy president is the only Jubilee candidate who has thrown his name in the hat? You
see, the thing is, first, there is no hat. The Jubilee has not started the process of recruiting candidates.
Well, he has told Kenyans, I want to be president in 2022.
But that, you see, again, and this is the problem with our Kenyan democratic. Okay, there should be a process. There are things called party primaries. They are not jokes. Part of the reason why we have problems in this country is because our party primaries are taken as though they are cattle dip selection processes. They're an integral part of our democratic exercise. And we understand that if we owe people debts on account of votes, then every person who's ever voted in this country is owed a debt by Raila Odinga, Uhuru Kenyatta, and things like that. So we must shift the conversation to the space where if the president was to declare a successor, it cannot be based on that. It must be based on the idea that this is the person I think best fits the bill to continue my agenda. And my agenda is fighting corruption. The question must be asked, is William Ruto the best person to fight corruption? Big Four, is William Ruto the best person to continue that? Cohesion, is William Ruto the best person?
Based on the argument of the political party that is Jubilee, you don't think the handshake will have anything to do with this?
No, of course it will.
Because, so can the president say Raila Tosha, because Raila is not
Possibly he can, and that's why I'm saying the question that needs to be answered is the question: if I want to pass the baton to someone, I must ask the question: do they have the ability to run better or equal to me? So if the president's agenda is 3, big 4, cohesion and the fight against corruption, is to choose a successor. He must tell Kenyans, this is the person I trust to deliver on these agendas.
And you know, Bichachi is working on political ideas do not exist in Kenya. Jubilee, as we know it, is a creation of William Samoei Ruto and Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. Now, if Jubilee is going to be in existence in 2022, and Mark Bichachi here expects Kipchumba here to go run to become president for Jubilee and win, then you know really that's a tall order. As we know it for a fact, if the sun comes from the east, the Jubilee presidential candidate is going to be William Samoei Ruto. And talking about succession, you cannot take President Kenyatta's word to the bank. Samoei Ruto had a cup of tea at Musalia Mudavadi's residence, and they said you're going to be a presidential candidate. A few hours later, there was a I'm going to support you to take office. It's not cast in iron. It's not cast in iron. President Kenyatta has got this unique opportunity. At the right time, he'll say, leadership of Kenya is not about friends, it's not about contracts or deals that we cut. It's going to be about the nation. You remember President Moi did the same for Professor Saitoti, and Professor Saitoti was in a state of shock when Moi said leadership of Kenya is not about friends. So even President Kenyatta may say, having watched you as my deputy for the last 10 years, I'm convinced that will take Kenya to the next level. So this thing, I mean, the way they say in the West, it's not yet over till the fat woman dances or sings.
Kipchumba.
One thing, first of all, we need to ask ourselves, what will be there that will be inherited, or what will be there that President Uhuru Kenyatta will impart on endorsing somebody? That's the first question. Will he have delivered on Big Four? Will he have delivered on the fight on corruption? Because will he as a person delivered on the cost of living? Because if he will not have delivered on the 3, then he has no political capital to endorse you. He might bring baggage. Instead of endorsing you, you start explaining to people why Jubilee did not deliver. Second, we all know in this country, political parties are like swimming costumes. So long as there's a swimming pool, it's not a must that you must have the swimming costume you used in Nyayo Stadium. You can get a new one and move on. So, the political system works in a mysterious manner. It is second to a birds. We are people who exercise right of thought. Jubilee as it is, the only political capital there is bestowed in 2 people, William Ruto and Uhuru Kenyatta. The rest is stories and making it look like a democracy and everything. But the reality of the matter is, if today Uhuru Kenyatta retires, having served his 2 terms, and William Ruto is not the candidate of Jubilee, Jubilee will remain just as Kano, just a big house with a story, nothing else.
Let's take a quick commercial break here on the broadcast. When we come back, we'll